Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for coming. Now, I believe it's two ladies there whose fault I'm up here tonight. It started with just two people wanting to know my testimony, and we seem to have half a church today. Before I start, I'd like to say I'm not proud of some of the things I've done, but I will never shy away from them. And someone once said to me, would you change your life? And the answer is no. I believe it's made me the person I am today. And I'm quite proud of being that person now. So my story is from my early years until me today, standing here in front of everyone. Now, if someone said to me 10 years ago that I'll be here and God will be in my life, I would have thought he had a great sense of humour. Because he needs one. So, my early years. Now, I grew up on a rough council estate in Southend. Now, my father went to prison on more than one occasion. And one of those periods was for a period of 3 years. Now, I was only 4 years old at the time, and he left my mum to bring up 3 children in poverty, basically. We had hand-me-downs, we had food off neighbours, just so we could get by. My father returned after his release from prison, but he still carried on with his life on the wrong side of the law. Over the years, we had many visitors to our house. Now, some of them, they wore disguises, because they were actually wanted by the police at the time. Now, when they arrived at our house, my dad used to usher them into the garden, and they used to spend a good hour down there talking away. And once they left, him and my mum would whisper. Now, over the years, I heard stories of my dad meeting with police officers and giving them money for dropping evidence or losing evidence against some of his friends. Now, I didn't realise, but the police were very corrupt in them days, and I believe my dad got off a lot of offences himself that way. Now, to my relatives and my dad's friends, they all looked up to him. They thought he was a great man. If they had a problem, we're going to see Pat. He'll get it sorted for us. But in reality, my father was a bully, a thug, and a wife beater. Now, as we were growing up, my father's attitude was, us children should have been seen and never heard. And if we did something wrong, we'd get his hand across our backsides. And over the years, they got more and more frequent. Now, coming from the estate I lived on, the kids here were a lot older than me. And they were always in trouble. And now, given my father's background, it was inevitable that I was going to get in trouble sooner or later. I always remember one occasion I went home after one of the older boys had punched me. I was only 10 years old and went home crying. My father's response to that was to drag me back out in the street to punch the boy, where the boy gave me another beating while my dad looked on. His other response was, I had to stand up for myself. But when I look at it now, I believe that gave me a licence to fight and do whatever I wanted. Because that's how my father wanted me brought up. Now, getting into trouble became more and more frequent in my life. And so did the beatings. Some deserved, and some weren't. Now, I always remember a time me and my sister was huddled up on the couch, crying as my dad beat my mother, just because his dinner wasn't the one he wanted. Now, my sister still looks at my dad with rose-tinted glasses. Unfortunately, my dad's passed away now, and I don't talk to any of my family. But as we got older, the smackings stopped with the hands, and we ended up with a leather belt. I remember on one occasion I got into trouble, and my dad sent me to my room to wait for that belt. And I admit, I wet myself. I was that scared. I waited for my dad to come up the stairs. My father would always come back up a couple of hours later and say he's sorry for hitting us, but we deserved it. And that used to make him feel better. As I reached my teenage years, I got more and more into trouble. The police started turning up at my door. I stopped attending school, and my dad's belt turned to his fists. By the time I was 15, I was in court with 6 others for theft and fighting. The case was adjourned for 2 months. When we come out of the courtroom, my father took me straight to the pub at the age of 15. He got me a whiskey and then told me what would happen to me when I went to prison. We scared the living daylights out of me. Eventually I got back into court and they only gave me 3 years probation. I finally finished school. Not that I had been there for nearly 2 years. I left with no qualifications and I had trouble reading and writing. I eventually found a job and kind of kept out of trouble for a while. And then I started to go into football matches. I started to hang out with the wrong sort of people. I would either go to Southend United, West Ham or Chelsea, whoever was at home, and depending who they were playing. We used to start drinking and just getting into fights. You call them football hooligans now, but we used to do it all the time. As I said, I'm not proud of half the stuff I've done, but that is part of my life. I knew if I carried on this way, I would end up in prison, hospital, or even worse. I needed a way out. And God wasn't in my life at that time. In fact, my father seemed to push me away from God. My 2 sisters were allowed to go to Sunday school. When I asked, I was told no. I joined the football team, which was run by a church. When my dad found out it was run by a church, he stopped me going. Anything to do with the church, for some reason, my dad kept me away from it. At the age of 17, I was on my way to a football match at Southend. And I passed the Army Career Centre. And something just seemed to say, go in. And I did. Just walked up, went in. The man there said, what do you want? I said, I want to join the army. Yes, great, he said. Asked me loads of questions. And I told him that I was on probation. And he said, don't worry about that. He goes, the day you sign is the day your probation will end. He goes, well, we'll get that squashed. And he goes, but as you're only 17, we need your father's signature. I said, okay, so I got the papers, took them home. My dad said, no, you're not joining the army. And we ended up having a massive row. In the end, he said, no, you can go, just want you out. So I left. 6 weeks later, a new chapter starts in my life. After my 12 weeks training at Aldershot, I was sent to my new home in Germany. And to meet, but I didn't know it then, lifetime friends. some I'm still in contact with today. Now, on my 18th birthday, I was a tough kid from the streets. The army had made me a lot tougher, so I thought they did. Then they told me that in 8 weeks' time I was going to Northern Ireland. I thought, great, another chapter in my life. I was all excited. And they sent us off for 8 weeks' training. We was put into the middle of these woods, and in the middle of these woods was a town specially built for training purposes. I'd say it was half the size of Wakering. Now, it had a civilian population made up from soldiers from different regiments. Now, it was their job to make it as real as possible. So we had bricks thrown at us, petrol bombs thrown at us, they spat at us, they even peed at us. We'd stand in the doorway and they'd be up out the bedroom window just peeing over you. Because this is what they said you're going to expect from Northern Ireland. Now, at the end of them 8 weeks, reality hits you and you think, I'm not excited anymore. And you become scared. You've got to remember, I'm only 18. And most of the people I'm going with are only 18. And we've never encountered anything like this. Now, the time had come for us to be on the streets of Northern Ireland for 3 months. And even our training had not prepared me for the reality of what I was going to see or do out there. It's the first time in my life I'd really witnessed hatred. Not just against us soldiers, but against each other. Hatred because they lived on the wrong side of the street. Hatred because they went to the wrong church. But yet, they believed in the same God. Now, all this pushed me further away from God. I thought, how can anyone believe in God if he allows all this to happen? And those who do believe in it are killing each other. So I told the army that I was an atheist. So from that day, when we had church parades, I was marched down with everyone else, and I was stood outside the church at attention in the rain or the heat, while everyone went inside. Now there's sometimes when you wish you just kept your mouth shut. I can tell you another story from the army. We had a parade, and I was always rebelling against the army. And we had a parade, and I thought, I haven't polished my boots, I haven't done this, I'm not going to go. I said, I'm going on the sick parade. They go, what's wrong with you? I said, I've got a toothache. They said, okay, go down and see the dentist. I thought, I'll go down there, get some antibiotics, come back up. He's prodding around in my mouth, he's gone, does that hurt? I said, oh yeah, a little bit. That's okay. And he took my tooth out. There was nothing wrong with that tooth whatsoever. So I never did that again. Now, that time I spent in Northern Ireland, it changed me and my views on life. I'd been spat on, I had bricks thrown at me and hit me, I'd had petrol bombs thrown at me, and one of them was from a 12-year-old boy. After 3 months, we were sent back to Germany. Now, over the next 18 months, I got into, I'd say, occasional trouble with the army, and ended up being disciplined on more than one occasion. I've had to, I know when grass goes brown, I've had to paint it green. The decorative rocks which you see are white. I've had to go out and spend a whole day painting rocks white. And when I get back to the guard room, have you done the underneath? I said no. Sent me back out to redo them again and the underneath. I've polished floors for hours at a time in press-up positions, so you're using one hand. I've cleaned the toilets, having to use my own toothbrush. But that's discipline for the army. It never stopped me getting into trouble though. I spent the odd weekend in the guardroom, like most soldiers do. Now over them first 2 years of service, I've become disillusioned with the army. It's a lovely word, that, disillusioned. Well, that's how my troop officer put it. I would have put it a different way, but as we're in church, we stick with it, disillusioned. Now, I went home on leave for 2 weeks, and I never returned. In that time, I took drugs, I began drinking. I ended up sleeping on the streets for a while, and then I turned to crime. I eventually ended up getting caught, and I was sent back to the army. Now the army sentenced me to 3 months in an army prison. It was a hard time. It's not like our prisons. You wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning and you're beasted till 8, 9 o'clock at night. Then lights out, and it happens day after day after day. It's a prison you wouldn't want to go to. Now after I was released from that prison, I was sent back to Germany, and I was given the option to either leave, but while I was there I had a lot of time to think, and on reflection there was nothing back home for me. I didn't want to go back to my father's. I had no friends back here, so I decided I was going to stay, and I signed up for another 3 years. Now during those 3 years I spent another 2 terms in Northern Ireland, in which I'd seen the aftermath of bombings in Ireland. I see children laying dead in the streets. I see them injured. I've seen the results of kneecappings. If you don't know what kneecappings is, it's where they shoot through the back of the knee there to blow their kneecaps out. Now what happened, the IRA used to take people off their estate, take them into a community centre, drag all the kids from that estate into the community centre to watch it and to say, this is what happens if you cross the IRA. So the kids are growing up scared, so they do whatever the IRA said. Many a times on a Saturday night, I was sent out to move burning buses from across the roads. And you knew as soon as you get there, you was going to be ambushed. The Irish people IRA used to just tell the kids, this is what you've got to do. And they just go and hijack a bus, or they go and rob a shop. We even lost a comrade out there. He was found floating up in the river one day. They said it could have been an accident, and they're not sure. What they used to do was, there was a couple of safe towns they used to allow you to go into. Him and his brother, they were both serving together, went into the safe town, and they picked up a couple of girls. They got separated. The next thing, his brother's floating up in the river. They couldn't prove nothing, but they do believe the girls had links with the IRA at the time. It was devastating for his brother, serving alongside him, and he had to go straight home. Eventually, I left the army, but some of those images stayed with me. But I'm lucky. I can deal with those images. There's a lot of soldiers out there who can't, and they can't cope with life. You see, when you leave the army has nothing more to do with you. They don't detrain you. You walk past that guard room, it's the last thing you ever see in the army. So when I got out, I met this girl. Because I didn't really want to go home, I was married within 18 months. Just as normal couples do, we got a mortgage. We settled down. And over the next couple of years, I would have times that I just needed to be on my own with my thoughts and images from what I'd seen. You see, whilst in the army, like I said, you do day in and day out is training, but you never get detrained. Many soldiers leave today and don't even know how to pay a bill because everything is done for them. And the government wonder why soldiers go off the rails a little bit. Well, if you think a trainer soldier, if he's in for 6 years, every day had to kill, and then just run back out into society. And he struggles. And they wonder why soldiers struggle out here. Why there's so many of us on the streets. Now, whilst I was in the army, I served as a combat driver. And I served with the best. I served with Gurkhas, I served with the Paras, I served with the SAS, even the Americans. And so my training was a lot more than most people. But as I said, I could handle the images. I think being in some of the situations I was, it helped me through. Where some soldiers are just left to deal with it on their own. And as I said, eventually I got married. And we got a mortgage and everything else, but I still needed that time alone. Now they called it, was it post-traumatic stress syndrome? It was never known in our time. And you can get different stages of it. Maybe mine is something like that, but I would never want to be diagnosed as it, because it's a stigma stuck with you all your life. Now, eventually, as I said, we got married. Just trying to see where I am now. That's over there. Right. Yeah. We got married, got a mortgage, but I still needed that time on my own. And I used to go off quiet times. Now, I didn't realise this was affecting my wife as much as it's affecting me, because I wouldn't talk. I just want to shut myself down. So over the next 3 or 4 years, we decided we're going to have children. And my wife said, well, maybe that can bring us closer together. But she had 3 miscarriages. So in the end, we stopped trying for children. My thoughts were still there. And as for God, I'm thinking, well, if there's a God, why are you letting this happen to me? So it just pushes you further and further away. Eventually our marriage began to break down. My wife started to have an affair. And she just got up for work one day and never come back. I've never seen her since that day. We was married for 10 years. Now, to make things worse, her dad was my boss. Now, 3 months later I went into work and there's a letter there saying you're redundant. So over a period of 10 years, I lost my wife, the chance of children, my job, and my home. So I turned back to drink and drugs, all the time blaming my wife for everything going wrong in my life. So today, do I blame her? No, I don't. I blame myself. You see, during those dark times, in our marriage, the miscarriages, I did not talk. I shut up. I shut myself away in my own thoughts when I should have been talking and discussing how we felt and how we could get over this together. But the army trained you with a survival mode, which is get up and get on with it. And that's what I did. I just got up and carried on my life as if nothing was happening. Later on, I met someone else. Now, she had a 3-year-old boy and could have no more children. And over a period of 14 years, I brought her son up as my own. Now, over them 14 years, I still had my quiet times. And I eventually got a job as a lorry driver. And I used to leave home Monday mornings and wouldn't come home until Friday evenings. And this eventually put a strain on our relationship. So I quit my job and eventually went working on the roads. Now on Ricky's, her son's 17th birthday, she told me she did not need me in her life anymore. I'd done my job. I found out later she'd been having affairs. I was surplus to requirement. I walked out of that relationship with 2 suitcases and a load of debt. For 2 years I went back drinking. I got into the occasional fights. And I was a 50-year-old man, thinking I was 18 again, trying to live my youth. And it catches up with you. And then God got hold of me one day, and he must have said, enough's enough. I'm going to use you. I eventually met my wife, Sharon, and my life changed altogether. Now, over the years, from my time in the army until I met Sharon, I always felt there was something missing in my life. Now, over that period of time, I looked into Buddhism, white witchcraft, spiritism, and the bottom of a bottle. But nothing filled the void in my life. I do now believe that God was looking down on me throughout my life. Because that is the only way, the only conclusion I can come to why I'm around today. That's when God said enough's enough. And what he did, he put Sharon in my path. It was a chance meeting. It was through Facebook, it was through one of Sharon's friends that we met. Our first Christmas together, we spent working in a soup kitchen. Because I thought, I need to give something back. Which I did. And one day she said, would you like to go to church? And trying to impress her. I said, yes, I'll go to church. It's not going to hurt me, is it? When I got there, it was totally different from how I thought it would be. There was soft seats. There was a live band. And there was even young people. After a few weeks, Sharon asked if I would like to go onto an Alpha course. Now this is a course introducing you to God and answering any questions you have about him. Which I did at Avenue Baptist Church. I come away from there, but I still had lots of questions that I still needed answers. So when our church at Shewby Baptist run the same course, a couple of months later, we attended that. And this lovely lady, Denise, was our leader on that course, and she answered all my questions. after that course, I gave my life to the Lord. That gap in my life was filled. I felt whole. But the Lord hadn't finished with me yet. He kept putting people in my path. I met a man called Del Roberts. He told me how he went on out in the evenings as a street pastor, talking and helping the homeless, also helping those who have been out clubbing and were a bit worse for wear. Now this appealed to me as I've been in their position. And there's many soldiers out there who still are. So we did some training and eventually become street pastors. For 2 years we went out working with most weekends through the night, trying to make a difference. Now, as Christians, we always say everything has a season. Now, after 2 years of being a street pastor and working in the winter night shelters, that season came to an end. It was time to find a new calling. This is when the Lord put in our path our friends Mark and Dee, Bill and Nola. Now Bill was the minister of Southend Evangelical Church, the sister church for this one, with his wife Nola alongside, full of wisdom. Now, they used to run Southend Healing Rooms, which basically was a centre where people would come in and ask for prayer for physical or spiritual healing. And they would be prayed over. Bill and Nola asked us to become part of that team, which we did until it eventually closed 18 months later. During this time we had become great friends with Bill and Nola and Mark and Dee. We eventually left Shewley Baptist and went to Bill's church in Southend. Bill had a similar background to me. He had been in the army, he had been homeless, he had been divorced. So we had a lot in common. Now over the next few years, Bill gave me a lot of encouragement. Encouragement that I never got from my family. I was always told I would never amount to anything. And when you're told that so many times, you believe it. He started to get me doing the odd jobs in the church. He would say, could you take me intercessory prayers for me today? I said, I've never stood in front of people. He's going, you'll be fine. Every other week I started doing that. Then it was something else. Because how would you like to preach one week? I said, he's going to have a go. And I did. So then he asked me, why don't you go to college? I said, Bill, I can hardly read or write. He's gone, you'll be fine. And he sent me to Bible college. And that's where I surprised myself. I was getting top marks in my essays. All thanks to spell check. But yes, everything was tight. So nothing went against me. They took it for what it was, and I was getting all the top marks. Bill was starting to get me to do more and more in the church. And then the odd Sunday service. And then Bill would just go on my way for the weekend, you're in charge. I'm thinking, this is great. After a little while, Bill said to me, how would you like to be my associate minister? I was thinking, well, this is a big challenge. I said, am I ready, Bill? He's gone, it's not down to me to tell you if I'm ready. You have to tell me if you're ready. And I made a commitment to Bill, and I said, yes, I'll do it. And he said he'll be my mentor for the next 3 years. Well, 18 months later, he says, I'm retiring. I said, where does that leave me? He said, you take over my church. He goes, you'll get the flat, you'll get a wage, He goes, think about it. Well, I thought about it, I discussed it with Sharon, and we prayed. And the answer was no. I wasn't ready. God would have put on my heart if he thought that church was for me. Now, it came with a flat. It was in the centre of town. It was ideal for growth. But for some reason, it wasn't for me. Now, Bill had sent me here a couple of times to do a bit of preaching. And I thought this was a lovely church. Didn't really take much notice of it. You come in, you do your job, and you go back to your church. Now, when Bill retired, we got a full-time minister in. And we didn't quite see eye to eye. And I started getting a bit disillusioned about our church. And then all of a sudden, I had a knock on the door. And it was two of the leadership team here. And they said, would you meet our leadership team? I said, yeah, if you want me to meet with them. I didn't know what it was about. And when I went to the meeting, they said, look, we haven't got a minister at the moment. Would you mind coming to ours just to help out? I said, no, that's fine. I said, I can do that. And when I come here, I noticed the difference in churches. This was a family church. This was home. It was warm and welcoming. And I felt at home. Now, over nearly 2 years, they decided they want a full-time minister. I said, oh great, I'll get the adverts together for you. I've done it for Southend, we'll put it all in, and we'll see if we'll get to apply. Never even dreamt of applying for me myself. And I woke up one morning, and I thought, why am I doing it? So I applied. After the church vote, and an hour and a half's interview with the UEC. I was told yes, I could be the minister of this church. You see, and God still hasn't finished with me. I'm going to be here for the next 3-4 years, maybe longer, until they get fed up with me. But then God will put me somewhere else. As I said, there's a season for everything in everyone's life. And when it ends, there's something else there. Now, I had a lot of support while I was going through my tough times. The support of Sharon, of Bill, Nona, my adopted family there. That's just the beginning of my story, really. Because for the next 4 years, I've got to build this church. I've got challenges ahead of me. I've even phoned Bill up and said, when you said about taking on a church, you never told me about church politics. He's gone, we've got to learn that yourself. I said, thank you very much, Bill. But he said, you'll do fine. Then we had my ordination here. And I couldn't believe how many people turned up for me to be ordained. It's great that I'm not on my own. And where I was told I was useless all my life, now I see how many people here put their trust in me. To stand here each week and preach the Bible. Now, most people in here probably know the Bible more than I do. They've been Christians all their lives. But I believe I can bring something else. I can bring the real life into this church. And when I preach, I try to bring that meaning into anything I say. They can relate to it outside. Now I know if someone walks through this door as a drunk, or suffering from having miscarriages, or takes drugs. I can talk to them. I've been there. I know how they feel. And I think they will relate to me. And that's what the church is all about. When I first got the job, I said, I want this church open every day. There was some people who were against it, but I did say the church should be open. And I sit out there from 7:30 every morning and just watch people go by. I've got kids stop talking to me now. They wave at me. The mums say hello. A man brought me over a load of dog biscuits. I said, what am I meant to do with them? He's got more people walk by with dogs. Give them to the dogs. Okay. People just come in for a chat. People just walk in here, walk straight past me and sitting here on their own. And now if this church wasn't open, they wouldn't have that here. And one woman said the other day, she goes, I thank you for opening the church. She goes, I just needed to come in and pray on my own today. We're a member of the congregation. She comes in every morning just to sit in here and pray. We have another one who comes down and just wants a hug every now and then to get her through the day. Some just come down for a chat. Some phone me up and say, do you want to come over in the garden with me? We've got a little Penelope out. I'd already gone home. But it's just nice. And I walk through the village now and people know me. And they always say hello. And I will stop and talk to anyone. As for my next adventures, we never know. But for the next 3 years I'm here. And maybe 4. Then I'll reach retirement age.
And you'll still be there.
And I'll still be there. Well, we never know that, Joe, will we? God might have a bigger calling for me somewhere else. He's trying to keep you here for the next 4 years. That's the problem. We've managed to get your daughter back for a while. But basically, that's my story. And would I change my life? No, I wouldn't. I'd go through everything again, even the worst times, just to be standing here today, knowing that I can help someone. If I can stand up here week in and week out, and one person walks away from here every Sunday saying, that spoke to me, that was meant for me, my job's done. Even though the doors are open 7 days a week, my job's done on that Sunday if someone says that was meant for me. So thank you all for coming. There is tea and coffee next door, and if anyone's got any questions, I'll try to answer them without crying. I'm glad I held it together up here tonight. Usually I cry, but I must be getting stronger in my life. Thank you so much. Thank you. I also just like to say, I'm proof God